Hi, good evening, and welcome to Committee of the Whole. Tonight is September 28th. This is a regular meeting of Committee of the Whole, and we do have quite a full agenda tonight, so we're going to get right into it. I'll start with a roll call of council and then turn it over to CAO Morris for a roll call of staff. Councillor Allen?
Here.
Councillor Alfred?
Present.
Councillor McKenna?
Here.
Councillor Brennan?
Present.
Councillor McGuire?
Present.
And Mayor Pankow?
Present.
Thank you. And CAO Morris, if you could do staff, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We have a lot of talent with us tonight. We have Director Dunlop, Chief Cheeseborough is here with us, Director Manhire, Manager Miller, Carrie Costello is here, Nadine Bennett, Janet Kozil, and our planner, Carl Grenke. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll also note that we have Sean Webster of Canopy Growth on the call. He will be present to answer questions by staff and council later on in the agenda when we start talking about item 7A. So with that,
okay, so it appears that Councillor Dwyer has lost connection. So we will revert back and we'll have Councillor Brennan, you were the chair for last month. So if you could just take over chairing until Councillor Dwyer gets back on.
Okay, with pleasure. So where did we leave off?
Sorry.
Director's reports. All right.
Actually, if we could just...
Are there any amendments to the agenda? I'm sorry. Yes, of course.
Councillor Brennan, if you don't mind, I'll just quickly request that council remove priority item C, Maple Ridge subdivision draft approval.
Okay, so noted. So that is off the list. Any other amendments to the agenda? Seeing none. Any disclosure of monetary interests arising from the agenda? Councillor McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm declaring a pecuniary interest on item 7D, 102 Brockville Street zoning amendment.
Okay, so noted, and you won't participate in that. Clerk Bennett, will we put Councillor McGuire in the waiting room at that time?
So as per our procedures, he's going to turn off his camera and his microphone.
Okay.
He can listen to the meeting, but he will not comment, nor will he give any visual cues.
Okay, so you're in the penalty box for that one. Any other disclosures of monetary interests? Seeing none, we have no delegations. Adoption of minutes for Monday, September 8th, 2020, Committee of the Whole meeting. Any movers for that? Councillor Alfred, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, you're back. All in favor? Okay, hand it over to you, Councillor Dwyer.
thank you. Thank you for taking over in my absence of internet. CAO Morris, I understand that we have 5 short director's reports tonight, so I'll turn it over to you to start that discussion.
Okay, so let's start off with Director Dunlop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to provide one update on the Beckwith Street project, just so everybody understands what's happening this week and next week. So this week, the items you're going to be seeing advancing on the project is the base lift paving on the parking bays, continued paving of cycle tracks. The median in the lower block will be completed. I did want to comment to the committee tonight, just as a reminder, those medians are going to be flush with the street when complete. I know there's been some anxiety out there with the public regarding what they're seeing, but again, when the street is reprofiled, it will be a flush textured feature. Other activities that are happening this week, they are going to continue with the decorative light installations. We have our fingers crossed that those decorative lights will be actually energized next week. On Wednesday, we're looking to see the Main Street traffic signals put into service. So that'll be a key milestone at that location. And we're also advancing with the remaining electrical work for the signalization at the intersection of Russell Street. Next week, the activities that'll be happening will be the completion of the other 2 manable medians in the upper blocks, completing curb tie-ins at Main Street. The sidewalk pouring will resume. The pouring contractor is actually out this week. And the traffic signal poles will be installed at Russell Street intersection, and the lower block will be prepped for paving on next week. So things are taking shape substantively each and every day, and we're getting very close to completion. Again, the target for that is the 17th of October to be fully complete.
Thank you, Director Dunlop. Does anyone have questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Director Dunlop.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Fire Chief Cheeseborough.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A brief update of our control group meeting, which was held on September the 22nd. We had an emergency meeting to discuss the recent releases that took place on the Saturday prior regarding the gatherings that the province announced. The health unit did provide information with regards to 6 active cases in our region, 1 in Lanark East, 2 in North Grenville region, 2 in Lanark West, and 1 in the Westport Gananoque area. The question was raised to Dr. Stewart and the health unit regarding the releasing of specific municipalities that had active cases. And the reason that question was posed was the school boards have announced the various schools where they've had active cases. We felt it important that it would assist us in reinforcing the message. If they said there was 2 cases in Smith Falls or 2 in whatever area, just to help to reinforce the need to have people continue to not gather in large crowds, to wear the mask, to continue sanitizing as a reinforcement tool. At that point, the health unit said due to privacy reasons that they could not do that, that it was a specific school boards that was releasing the information and not the health unit or the director of health. The health unit is trying to align the screening protocols of the daycares and schools and the employers. They're aware of the misalignment and the releasing of the toolkits, and we were to receive a toolkit later that day, which we did. And certainly we're reviewing that right now to ensure that it meets with the protocols that we have as an employer to be able to provide that information to the workers. The assessment centers are overwhelmed. Ontario did announce the releasing of more assessment centers, which would be taking place at the various pharmacies. I believe it was 60 in total that they said that they were going to release to the various pharmacies to take the pressure off the current assessment centers. They're working as diligently as they possibly can to announce some more releases of that. As I stated, the Premier announced Saturday about the reduced gathering and the size, gathering size, and how that was going to impact municipalities with regards to functions that they were trying to get up and running to support their local businesses. For instance, the Russell Street closure, that appears to be a manageable closure for the bars and restaurants that are participating in that. And it's imperative upon those businesses to ensure that they have no more than 25 people outside and to ensure that the masks are being worn when people are walking around. So the onus of responsibility has been put back onto the small businesses that are participating in those specific events. There was concerns raised about having a special event for the reopening of Beckwith Street. That has been since taken off the table on some good advice from both council and by the medical director of health in discussions with the control group and the province of Ontario through our field officer. The health unit expressed concerns about live music and activities that hold a potential for gathering crowds, suggest not to promote or have entertainment as a drawing card that will draw more people in that's currently permitted under the regulation. The health unit has suggested create permission forms for groups to sign off to demonstrate that they have been following the protocols and that they will when they are participating in certain events. Baseball tournament occurred in the park on the weekend without booking. So again, staff went out and advised the groups. They were unaware of the reduction in the gathering sizes and certainly complied right away. So there was no issues there. So it's excellent to see that once you do advise them that people are compliant and there was no issues with that. The rules indicating that only organized activities can proceed with clearly outlined COVID protocols were laid out in advance. So we are reinforcing that in our messaging to ensure that people are compliant and they are well aware of the current regulations and restrictions for larger gatherings. The first day of the arena bookings occurred on Monday without incident, so that's a positive boost. Special occasion protocol still pending from the province. So Remembrance Day, Halloween, and Christmas. The province has not made a determination exactly how they're going to handle that. A number of municipalities have already stepped up and decided not to hold their Christmas parades or Halloween in certain areas. So we're waiting to see exactly what the Legion's going to do with Remembrance Day and the other groups as far as gatherings go. Again, I'm going to reinforce the new gathering rules with the updated signage that's required at the parks. And today, the province announced 700 confirmed cases in the province of Ontario, far exceeding any other time period since this pandemic has started in Ontario. That is not solely attributed just to the mass gatherings, but certainly part of it's attributed to the increase in testing. So we've gone from 10,000 a day testing up to 43,000. So it certainly makes sense that you're going to have more cases. Ottawa registered 89 cases today. But we've got to be diligent. We've got to be the leaders when we're putting the messaging out. We've got to be seen as the promoter of certainly the regulations that the province has put out. So if we're not going to do it, then the general public's not going to do it. And it's crucial that we continue to push that along. They've announced today that they expect a massive wave for the second wave. They're not talking about the level of seriousness with regards to the COVID-19. They're just talking about the massive numbers of individuals that they expect to come forward through the testing clinics and be confirmed cases. So once again, what we're doing, according to our medical director of health, is right in line, and we should keep doing exactly what we're doing and promote the social distancing, promote the mask, promote the hand sanitizing, and the formats that we're currently using, whether it's Zoom or teleconferences, again, is the proper tool in order to ensure that we're putting forth our right foot, and I'm sure that the residents are going to follow that. That's all I have for tonight, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the chief? Councillor McKenna.
Thank you very much, Chief. I heard recently an analogy regarding the second wave, and it would be appropriate, you as the fire chief, instead of the waves are implying that it's going to come no matter what, the wave just keep rolling in. And the other analogy, which might be more fitting, is it's like a building burning down, and the fire department arrives, they're pouring water on the building to put it out, and they stop before the fire's right out. They give up on it, and it reignites again. And they're suggesting that we have a lot of control of keeping the water on this until we put the fire out. And I rather like that analogy, not just because you're the fire chief, but because it implies that we do have control over this second wave or third wave. They don't just roll in. We can, by following your advice and the public health advice, we can put this monster fire out.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor. You're absolutely right. And again, that's why our emergency control group is extremely diligent in trying to reinforce the current regulations. Both staff inside the office, the employees, are following the regulation as prescribed. And we do, to a certain extent, we will have control over what's taking place in Smith Falls. And again, we've been very fortunate because we've had excellent compliance from the general public, and we've had buy-in from the staff who have followed it to a T.
Thank you, Chief. Does anyone else have any questions for the Chief? Councillor Brennan.
Thanks, Stephen. You know, I watched the news conference today, and it's beyond concerning. And it seems to me that we as a municipality, I know that the province will have directives in terms of the upcoming things we're going to have to deal with, i.e., Remembrance Day, Halloween, you know, Santa Claus parades. And are we going to, or will the emergency control group talk about that? You know, is it up to the province, or do we have a lever on our own to make decisions, you know, for the best of the community here?
Through the chair, we don't have control over provincial regulations. The province of Ontario has indicated that the gatherings cannot exceed the specified limits. And if we were to promote and certainly advertise to get people out in crowds, then we are in non-compliance with the current regulation. However, saying that, for us to ignore what the province has laid out or turn a blind eye to it, we're doing the same thing. We're non-compliant. So what we could do at this point in time is hope that the province, they've indicated that they're going to take a regional approach to any more sanctions or any more directions. And given the fact that our case count has been low, we're extremely hopeful that it's going to be done in that fashion and not be done a blanket order right across.
Yeah. Through the chair, just to be clear, I'm not advocating or suggesting that we promote gatherings, but if we have what my question was, do we have a lever to limit that, notwithstanding the provincial orders?
Through the chair, sorry, Councillor Brennan. If we limit it, then it's going to become an enforcement tool. So it's going to rely on the police bylaw to enforce the maximum number of people. And this is my personal opinion. I think you're going to find it extremely difficult, especially for a Santa Claus parade, to say that, you know, the maximum is 100 people or 25 people or 50 people. You're going to find it tremendously difficult to try to enforce that. Chief McGilvery has indicated that those type of activities where there are large crowds, it's extremely taxing on the police as well as bylaw. And what we're doing is we're going to create a very unpopular situation to try to control crowds or keep people back. The parade itself would have in excess of the total number of people that you're permitted, and that's considered an organized gathering. So it would be a difficult task.
100%. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, thank you, Rick. We'll move on to the next report.
Okay, yeah, so next up we have Director Manhire from Community Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few quick updates. The arenas are both open as of today. As the chief indicated, we are getting very good use and good compliance from groups. So that's a nice thing as well. The walking concourse will open as part of the plan starting next Monday. So we'll get some information out for people in a number of different stages over the next week or so to let people know. We do have the Big Brothers Big Sisters are also going to be starting up their youth program again starting October 13th. And so we've worked out a plan for access for them as well. We did have, just to keep on the kind of COVID line, we did have one case reported at Chimo school, and it was not, there was a class sent home. There was not a case. They were not related to the daycare, the before and after program. So there was, the protocol is to actually watch for health signs and then take action from there. So there was no immediate action required. We also, just to let people know, we have the tender for the VIA snow clearing going out today. And that will go hit the paper by Thursday, and packages will be available through community services.
Thank you. Are any questions from council regarding the director's report? I don't see any. Oh, Jay, you
Yeah,
got one.
yeah, always.
Thank you.
Yeah, just on the walking concourse, Director Manhire, what would the protocols be there in terms of walking around and the 6 foot distancing and masks? Is that going to be required, and how is it going to be one way as a walker there? I'm sure a lot of people are interested in that.
Through the chair, that's a great question. We do have separate access points for walkers. They'll be able to enter through the side door. There's also the washroom access upstairs, and then exit through the other door. People will be required to wear a mask in the building when they're not engaged in physical activity. When they are engaged in physical activity, it is okay to take the mask off. We will have one direction, and we do ask people that are not in their own circle to walk separately so that they're not exposing their fellow users.
Okay, thank you. Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from council? Okay, sorry, my internet connection's a little laggy. I don't think I saw any, so CAO Morris, I'll turn it over to you for the next set of reports.
Sure. So next up, we have our Manager of Economic Development and Tourism, Jennifer Miller.
Thank you. Just two quick things this evening. St. Lawrence College received a Skills Advance Ontario grant to support the tourism sector in both Kingston and in Smiths Falls. And we've been working really closely on workforce development issues with St. Lawrence College over this last year, and we're really pleased that they included us in this project. So this grant funding will allow the college to provide hospitality and entry-level customer service training for up to 80 participants. There'll be no cost to the participants or to the businesses where they're employed. And it'll also be offered to those seeking employment, and the employers will be eligible for a hiring bonus if they bring one of these participants on board. So an advisory committee of local tourism and hospitality businesses has been struck to prepare for this training and will begin meeting this week. And finally, I'd just like to thank Council for endorsing the Small Business Support Program, which we launched last week. And in the first few days, we have received 23 applications. 7 businesses have already been approved, and there are many more being processed this week. Approvals happen every Wednesday, with checks being delivered on Friday of the same week. So that's it for me.
That's great news, Jennifer. Thanks for sharing that. Council, do you have any questions or comments? Perhaps just unmute yourself and then I'll be able to see you. I don't see anyone unmuting. So thank you, Jennifer. CAO Morris?
Yes, so the 5th of 5 reports is for me, and it'll be brief. I want to provide an update to committee on a lobby effort that's been underway since 2018, and that is revolving around the issue of perpetual care funds for cemeteries. So brief background, if you run a municipal, any cemetery for that matter, you need to set aside money in a care fund. Ours is well north of $500,000 in the account right now, and we can only access the interest on the reserve fund for operating to offset operating costs, and it doesn't come close to covering them. So we've been advocating. I guess we had a loud enough voice through the mayor in our advocacy efforts that they've invited us to be on a stakeholder group. We met in December, and then the world changed, and we hadn't heard much from the Ministry of Government Services, Government and Consumer Services. But we had our second meeting this morning, and I'm really delighted to say it looks like we may have some positive movement. I think they've been listening to what we're saying, and we can expect more progress on this file, I hope, in the very near future. So there wasn't a commitment today, but there were a few proposals that I think check off all the boxes that we've been advocating for the past 2 years. So that comes as good news, and I will certainly keep committee up to speed on how this file progresses into something that'll give us more latitude and flexibility. Be happy to answer any.
That's great. Thank you, CEO Morris. Are there any questions or comments from council? I don't see any. CEO Morris, do you see any?
No, not seeing any hands. So there'll be more opportunity to comment on this one as well.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Great.
Nope. Thank you for confirming. Okay. With that, we'll move on through the agenda to item number 6, correspondence items. We have 3 correspondence items tonight. Item A is a letter from Mr. Glenn Castle. The topic is the Victoria Park Betrayal. It is posted on the municipality's website for those interested, and it does not have any action items coming out of it. It is strictly for council's review. Item B is the Ontario Energy Board notice. Enbridge Gas has applied to raise its natural gas rates effective January 1st, 2021. Again, it is posted on the municipality's website, and there is no action coming out of the correspondence for council's consideration. The final letter, item C, is a letter from the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing dated September 18th, 2020. The topic being parkland dedication, development charges, and the Community Benefit Charges Authority. So this is an item that has been discussed by council in the past. Again, it is an information item for council's review, and there is no action item coming out of it. Are there any comments or questions from council on any of the 3 correspondence items? Seeing none.
Madam Chair.
Move on. Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Which one would you prefer to speak to?
Just a comment on the letter from Mr. Castle. Mr. Castle feels that this council has violated their code of conduct, the fundamentals of good governance, and our sworn oaths. And I remind him that if that is his perception and he has some facts or proof of that he should avail himself of the mechanism available, provided by the province, to make a complaint to the Integrity Commissioner. In my personal opinion, people can say whatever they wish to with impunity. And it does not have to be necessarily rooted in truth or fact. For those who hold public office, there is not as yet any viable method by which to address insinuation and defamation. That would be my comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Certainly our procedural bylaw directs that any correspondence that are requested by the correspondee to be added to a council meeting are indeed added. It may be something that we seek direction from our clerk on when the procedural bylaw comes up for amendment. I know it's something that she has been working on for quite some time. So perhaps that's something that we can consider on a go-forward basis. But in the meantime, Mr. Castle's correspondence requested specifically to be added to the agenda, and thus it is on there. But your comments are duly noted for the record. Seeing no further comment.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, I'd like just to ask a question about item 6C, the letter from Minister Clark.
Thank you. Yes.
I guess I'll ask the CAO through you, Madam Chair. Just I believe I understand it, but I wonder if there's a layman's explanation of what that letter means and what, if any, impact it has on our municipality.
Councillor McKenna, perhaps rather than directing this straight to CAO Morris, perhaps CAO Morris, we could have this item added as a priority item on a committee of the whole agenda, perhaps the next one, for a fulsome explanation.
If that's committee's desire, we can certainly do that for sure.
That's fine. I like the letter. I just would like to talk a little bit about it or understand it a little better. That's all. And if council wants it on an agenda, that's fine with me.
Thank you.
What I might offer is the Municipal Finance Officers Association did a really great summary of the various changes. Some are regulatory, some are legislative changes. So I would be happy to circulate that to committee members to kind of get a 40,000-foot look at what's being put in place. There are many layers to it. It introduces a community benefits charge and with limits on that charge and reporting requirements and exemptions from the charge. So there are all kinds of layers, all meant to provide additional tools for municipalities to raise funds to build complete communities. So it does replace some existing tools that we have and adds to them. So I would start with distributing this summary, and if there are further questions, we'd be happy to bring back a more formal report, if that's the wish of committee.
Thank you, CAO Morris. Are there any further questions or comments on the correspondence items received? Seeing none, we'll move into priority items. Number 7 on the agenda. 7A, we start tonight with the amendment to the smoking and vaping in public places and enclosed workplaces report with Director Costello. And I will turn it over to Director Costello.
Thank you. As Madam Chair noted, we do have Sean Webster in attendance this evening to answer any questions that you may have. The town is in receipt of a request from Canopy Growth, as Tweed has received a cannabis research license from Health Canada for testing of their cannabis product. Unfortunately, our bylaw, specifically section 4.3, restricts smoking or vaping in an enclosed workspace. The actual Smoke Free Ontario Act does allow smoking or vaping in an enclosed workspace as long as a license has been administered, in which in this case it has been. Unfortunately, our bylaw takes precedence over the legislation. Therefore, right now as it stands, Tweed would be unable to facilitate this testing. With the concurrence of council, we'd like to bring forward an amendment to our smoking and vaping bylaw to allow smoking or vaping in enclosed workplaces when there is a license to do so by Health Canada. So if council has any questions, I feel free to direct them either to myself or Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Carrie. I see that Mayor Pankow has unmuted himself. Mayor Pankow, do you have questions or comments?
Just a comment. I mean, excuse me. I think when we initially launched our smoking bylaw in I believe it was 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. This is not something we anticipated. It was designed to protect the public, act as a deterrent. And in this situation, I think Canopy makes a good case that it warrants a change in the bylaw to enable them to do research. Research, I think, which ultimately benefits Canopy, our community, and the country. So I'm fully supportive of this change.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pankow. Councillor McKenna, do you have comments or questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm supportive of the recommended change as well. I do have a question, and I don't doubt that for a minute that Canopy has received this federal license, but I just wonder if staff have actually laid their eyes on that license as part of our due diligence. Is it included in the application and we've actually seen it?
As it stands right now, Councillor McKenna, we've only received the letter. if council chooses to pass the amendment and they are going to be using their smoking or vaping in enclosed workplaces, we can ask to see a copy of the license before they begin.
Sorry, if I may, Madam Chair, the letter, what letter? Sorry, is that goes along with the approval that they received?
The letter we received was simply a letter from Canopy Growth requesting the amendment. If council concurs, so though we could ask for a copy of the actual license before we allow.
If I may, Madam Chair, I again, I don't doubt that they've received this at all. Now another Canopy group, cannabis group could come forward and ask for an exemption for research and tell us that. So unless we have some mechanism just to see it as part of our approval process, it's just, I think we would just do well to cross our T's and dot our I's, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further unmuted microphones, so I'm going to take that as an assumption that there are no further comments, but I'll give it 1 second. And again, apologize for my lack of internet. Thank you. With that, thank you, Sean, for attending tonight. I'm sorry that this was fairly anticlimactic for you, but we are pleased to be moving the item forward, and I believe it will appear on the next council meeting, which will occur, if I'm not mistaken, Director Costello, next Monday. Is that correct?
The next meeting occurs, yes, October the 5th.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, we'll move on through the agenda. Item 7B is a request to be appointed to the Accessibility Committee by Councillor McGuire, and I will turn it over to Councillor McGuire to speak to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we know, we've got enough members on the Accessibility Committee to appoint a second council representative. I'm happy to serve on that committee if there's a consensus from council. So that's why that's on the agenda tonight. We're hoping Nadine Bennett's been working really hard to get our first meeting together, and it'll be really great to get that committee off the ground.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from council? Seeing none. Perhaps Deputy Clerk Bennett.
So just, I know Councillor McGuire is clear on this, but just for the record, currently we have the numbers to substantiate 2 members of council. However, as we move forward, if anyone was to resign and we not be able to get another member, then that number of council reps will have to change. So just so everyone's clear on that.
Thank you. The alternative, of course, is that we make an exception to the bylaw. I don't see any objections from council, so I feel confident that this will proceed to our next council meeting for an appointment by resolution, I believe. With that, we'll proceed down the agenda to item C. Item C has been.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred.
Just, I wanted to, with Councillor McGuire volunteering to go on the Accessibility Committee, I think we should, I want to recognize the fact that he's been involved from the very beginning in helping Ms. Bingley get the terms of reference. He has been a real advocate for this since he came on council. So I like all, I'm sure everyone else is very grateful that he's going to volunteer to see this right to the end.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Unfortunately, Councillor McGuire has hidden his video, but I'm sure he is blushing with appreciation. And no doubt, despite the fact that I missed the declaration of disclosure of monetary interests, I am sure that he has hidden his mic, or his video rather, because he has declared in this next item, this is priority item 7D, 102 Brockville Street zoning amendment. The owner and applicant is McGuire, and I will turn this over to Mr. Grenke. Mr. Grenke, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm bringing for Council's direction a zoning application we've received for a property, about a 900 square meter, 9,500 square foot property at the corner of Brockville Street and Elmsley. There's a house built around 1890 on the property. It's been divided into a duplex. There's a wood frame garage as well on the lot. The property has been identified by council as a property of historical interest, but it does not have a heritage designation at this point. So the proponents, Michael McGuire and Stephen McGuire, have applied to the town to rezone the property to accommodate renovations and to include 2 additional units on the property. So that would include a conversion of the duplex to accommodate a 3rd unit. So that would meet our zoning definition of a converted dwelling. And also eventually, not immediately, but in the future, they'd also like to renovate the existing garage to accommodate a 4th dwelling unit on the property. So the lot is currently zoned R2, which does not allow that form of housing. So the applicants have applied to rezone to R4, which is the proper zoning category to accommodate a converted dwelling, and also seeking an exception to allow the conversion of the garage into a detached accessory building. So the public meeting was held earlier this summer by the Planning Advisory Committee. There was no objections were raised from the public. The applicants have confirmed that when the additional parking spaces are required to be provided when the additional units are going in, then they would have to amend the parking to comply as well. So broadly speaking, I think this is it's a good proposal. It's some gentle intensification at a fairly high profile intersection in the town. The proponents are not proposing to remove or alter the exterior of the building. Or either of the building. They're looking to do this substantially inside. So I think I won't go into too much more detail. It is they are looking to up it to what we consider to be medium density residential. However, that is the official plan accommodates that on these locations, especially on the arterial road. And I think broadly speaking, it has been demonstrated to comply. It is a fairly small scale residential project, but I think it makes sense in this location and within this context. As such, staff are recommending to council that the zoning application to rezone the property to R4 special exception 7 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. I believe Councillor Allen has comments.
Yes, I'm very pleased to support both of these reports, and this property already sits on our properties of interest, and we're hoping, the Municipal Heritage Committee is hoping that the owners will then move to designate, because this home was the home of a gentleman, a contractor in our town that made many beautiful things. Our fire hall, Host Tower, my very favorite building that was taken down sadly, the Market Square, all of the things, the legacy that he left as a contractor, a bricklayer, and a businessman contribute to the whole story of this home. And I'm so thrilled that in their report, they've said that it's proposed to eventually be converted into a 4th dwelling. The proposed renovations and restorations are not planned to include any additions or demolitions. So given what they've done already to this beautiful building, I have complete trust that they will continue to just turn it into its original beauty. So I'm very happy to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Alfred, you have comments.
Both Councillor Brennan and I saw this at the Planning Advisory, and I won't speak for him, but we moved to bring this recommendation to council. It is a beautiful building, And I'm particularly fond of the little garage that eventually they will finish. So I'm looking forward to what they do there, as well as what they're going to do in the main building.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Councillor Brennan, I saw you had unmuted yourself, but now you are muted. Do you have questions or comments on this?
No, I just cut out there for a minute, but no, I agree with everyone else, of course. I support this, so good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have to say I have a personal affinity for this house, although not a direct financial interest in it, but it was my very first apartment when I moved to this beautiful town. And so I can speak with firsthand knowledge about the monstrosity that is the size of these units. I can tell you that I downsized from the apartment to move into my current house. So it's delightful to see that not only is this building being preserved with such integrity, but that it provides an opportunity to create more housing units in town in a cost-effective manner that makes the economics of maintaining a property like that feasible. So I too have, like Councillor Allen, have been watching this project with great interest and can't wait to see what they do with the spectacular carriage house out back, because it's certainly a one-of-a-kind feature in town. So thank you, Carl. This item will appear on the next council agenda next Monday, and you have your direction. Moving on, we move on to item 7E, former item 7E, extending patio season report. And the report is with Director Costello. So I'll turn it over to Director Costello.
Thank you. Looking for council's concurrence this evening to pass a resolution to allow an extension to patio season on public lands within Smiths Falls. Currently, the bylaw denotes October 31st. We'd like to extend that specifically with the COVID pandemic and allowing our businesses, restaurants, the opportunity for more business. We'd like to extend that to December 31st, 2020. As well, we'd like to add the provisions regarding a parking space that it'll have a 1.2 meter wheel stop buffer at each end of the parallel space. This becomes more imperative with the inclement weather coming upon us. The owner of the patio must ensure that the area is free of snow and ice, and our Director of Public Works and Utilities has noted that the staff will work with the business owners to show them where the snow can be moved and where it can be deposited. And that'll be a collaborative approach with the owners and our Public Works crew. And again, the final being that the owner must maintain the patio in a good means for safety concerns of all the users. So with council's concurrence, we'd like to pass a resolution to extend it under those parameters.
Thank you, Director Costello. Councillor Allen, you're unmuted. Do you have questions or comments on this?
I didn't realize I was, sorry. No, I'm in support of this. I think we should allow the outdoor patios as much as we can. In my usage of them and seeing people that are using them, they seem to be very well appreciated and very busy. And although they may need some heaters, but I think I've been in patios, especially in the larger cities that have the heaters in the patios, and it just makes it beautiful. Snow falling and you're just sitting having your dinner. So I'm very much in support of this. I think if this pandemic continues, maybe we'll look at extending it. I don't know. I think it's going to be a good trial to just see if it's going to work and to get feedback from our businesses.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Mayor Pankow, I believe you have questions or comments?
Sure, thank you. Just asking back to, I guess, Director Costello, why the plan would be to stop at December 31st. If businesses are preparing to operate through December, which means there are probably preparations and protocols in place and standards for snow removal, would we consider going beyond December 31st? Obviously, I think we would, but which would mean it would have to come back if we did make a decision now to go beyond that. So just wondering why we have that date.
To be honest, Mayor Panko, I'm under the impression that that was the recommendation coming out of the mayor's task force. But if council concurs, I mean, that's, more of a date, I think, because of weather and snow clearing provisions. But I see CAO Morris is putting his hand up, so possibly he can offer something further.
Yeah, through the chair, we did kind of an environmental scan of what other communities are doing, and Kingston, for instance, have extended till November 30th. Ottawa are working on a full extension through the winter with a lot of conditions on maintenance of not only the private property and the public road allowance, but the sidewalk leading to it. So we felt December 31st was certainly doable. If past winters are any indication, we typically don't get a lot of accumulation of snow up to the end of the year. So if this is a typical year, we should be in good shape. But certainly, if council wishes to extend it, then we want to kind of take the pulse of the policy, probably in November or early December, to see if it's being used. And if there's demand there, we'll certainly bring it back to extend it. But we felt this was a good start to extend it for 2 months.
Well, I mean, I don't mind starting this way, and the opportunity to extend, have a discussion back later in the year. My only concern would be do business owners who have to make the capital investment in heaters and line up all their snow removal, are they more likely to do it if they know they've got a longer season? Would be the only it's a benefit of extending beyond December 31st.
CAO Morris?
Well, what I would say in response is even if it only goes to December 31st, I think there's an opportunity to start earlier in the spring, late winter. So perhaps that might further justify the investments that are being made. I would like to just comment on the buffer, and I know that was removed by committee and council when we brought this forward previously. We think from a risk management point of view, it's more important during the winter months. Certainly our objective is to avoid any type of vehicular and pedestrian or patron interaction. And of course, the likelihood of that increasing in the winter when the weather's inclement and the roads might be slippery increases. So that's the justification for bringing it forward again with a buffer. It's very specific to winter conditions.
Thank you.
Oh, I think we might have lost Councillor Dwyer.
Yeah, I think we have Councillor Brand. Can you revert back to the chair?
Yep. Councillor McGuire, do you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I was checking out Lake 88 News the other day, and they extended their COVID patio rules into 2020, end of 2021. So I thought that was a really great idea because it gives businesses the certainty when they're planning over the winter months for the upcoming season, what kind of rules to expect. And I really agree with the mayor on what's the advantage of putting all this investment into a propane heater if there's a risk that you lose it on December 31st. I would support these provisions for winter conditions and the previous provisions that we approved on, I believe, August 10th, maybe, or June, whenever it was. But having those to the end of 2021, because we know that our restaurants are going to they're really going to need to hit the ground running next summer. And I think it would give them that certainty. I think if there is a problem with the snow removal in December, it's going to be less of an effort on staff to have to come and bring it to us if there's a problem versus having to bring it to us anyway if it's working. So I would support these provisions and extending the other provisions to the end of 2021.
Thank you, Councillor McGuire. Yeah, sorry, I'm back up. I think I fixed my internet. Does anyone else have any further comments? Councillor Alfred?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with both the mayor and Councillor McGuire that we're good. This is going to be a long recovery period. If there is opportunity for them to, on a nice winter day in January or February, I would be open to extending this to the end of 2021 with mentioning that, because it wouldn't have to necessarily come back, that the provisions around around snow removal and the 1.2 meter wheel stop buffer would be seasonal rules. Could we adapt what staff has given us and slightly change it to accommodate an all season?
Okay, I think I see nodding heads on that, but I'll look to Director Costello for clarity. And then I see Councillor McKenna's hand up.
Oh, if you wanted to go ahead with Councillor McKenna.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, thank you. It's an intriguing idea. I don't like to make it on the fly like this. I'm just thinking if we're going to get into this for the long haul, so we generally know where the patios are now, but with this provision, there could be new ones popping up, I hope, if they help businesses in places that we hadn't expected or anticipated. And I just wouldn't mind hearing from Director Dunlop, particularly around snow removal or maybe not. I just wonder if we could make this decision in a week or so. I just would seem that's a pretty big change going from extending it 3 months to a full year and a bit. So I would just like to think about this winter a little bit more and just what are the implications of that. That's just my thought. I'm not opposed to it. But.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. CAO Morris?
Yeah, I think just one perspective in the winter would be it will likely add more costs for removals instead of using mechanical equipment to hydraulic equipment to remove snow. There will be an element of shoveling and working around the patio. All certainly doable, but you just should be aware that that will add to our winter control costs. And the reason for the December 31st, of course, is that we tend not to get a lot of snow, so we really didn't think that would have budgetary impacts for the balance of the year. But if we go through the winter, we would certainly need to look at that in our budget submission.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan and then Councillor Alfred.
Yeah, so one point is this applies to patios not only in the DBA but throughout town. I know there's not a lot of them, but that's one point. The other point is, and to CAO's point, the removal of snow is that not put on the business to remove the snow within the patio and with the buffer zone around it?
CAO Morris?
Through the chair, yes, it is, but that snow eventually has to be taken away, and that becomes the town's responsibility. So we do routine removals of snow accumulation downtown, and we come along at night with a large loader or a blower, and we blow it into a truck and we take it away. Clearly, we won't be able to do that when we come to a patio. We'll have to hand remove it, and it will simply add time.
Okay, I actually have no problem with extending it through for a year. I mean, I don't know what kind of business people are going to get in January and February, but like someone said, if you have a beautiful day with some Indian summer, then you can have a pop-up maybe. But I think that's the least we can do. And we've talked about this at the mayor's recovery meetings too as well. So.
Thank you. Mr. Dunlop, did you have further questions before I move on to Councillor Alfred?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I just wanted to kind of echo the comments of CAO Morris. There could be some additional expense, but we do have, I would remind council, once we move into October, we will have a worker on patrol overnight that patrols the streets as required under the minimum maintenance standard, takes temperatures, etc. That can be an activity that we could assign or work into that shift. So again, I don't believe that the numbers of the patios would overwhelm us from what I understand, but certainly we're here to help out any way we can in continuing business in downtown Smiths Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlop. Councillor Alfred, you had a follow-up question?
Not really a question, but Councillor McKenna's right. This is not anything that we have to pull the trigger on tonight. If we want to give staff an opportunity to consider all of the ramifications of this, I'm not adverse to bringing this back in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor McGuire, before we go back to you, I'll provide my own comments if you don't mind. I love this idea. I think it's amazing that COVID has become the reason that municipalities have become so adaptable and flexible. The idea of a winter cities movement, it has been intriguing to Canadian planners for close to a decade. And there's been very, very little uptake from municipalities to undertake activities and programming in the winter because they didn't think that people would use it, and the expense of undertaking such an initiative would really result in net benefit to the community. I think the idea that we're going to have public spaces that are actively used during the winter, hopefully very heavily so, is fantastic. And I very much look forward to seeing this. And with any luck, perhaps it's something that Canadians continue to embrace in years after COVID. So I have, in the work up to tonight's meeting, I've spoken to Councillors McGuire and Pankow and Brennan about the idea of extending this to the end of the winter season for this bylaw. So I have no problem supporting an extension until spring 2021 for winter patios. I think we're in a position at this point where we know that our businesses are going to be struggling over the winter year, and I think it was Councillor McGuire perhaps who made a comment that if businesses are going to invest heavily in the infrastructure needed to make this possible, then we need to give them some confidence that there's some longevity to that. So I am 100% in favor of bringing this forward as quickly as possible so that those businesses can begin to prepare and ready themselves for the season. Councillor McGuire, you had additional comments.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, do you support extending the existing provisions to the end of 2021 as well, or just the winter provisions at this time?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I missed that from the beginning. Are you asking myself directly or Director Costello?
No, you just because you said to spring 2021, I'm wondering if you support extending the existing provisions to December 31st, 2021, so that the restaurants and patio owners in town will have time to start preparing for the summer and they've got the process in place.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying. Perhaps Councillor McGuire, because I missed the first part of this discussion, can you just summarize your understanding of what the amended motion is, and then perhaps we'll do a straw vote just to see that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, so I would move that we confirm the existing provisions that have already been put in place until December 31st, 2021, and that we approve the proposed provisions as presented until spring 2021 in correspondence with our winter parking guidelines.
Thank you. So I'll just call for a show of hands for those in favor of bringing this forward at the next meeting of council as opposed to deferring. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, I see consensus. So Director Costello, do you have that clearly noted?
I'm unclear on what the second part of Councillor McGuire's proposed resolution was regarding the spring of 2021.
Councillor McGuire, can you clarify?
Yeah, thanks, Director Costello. Just that the winter restrictions will only be in place as long as the winter parking restrictions are in place. So that if they want to expand to the buffer zone when spring comes, they're open to adding the table.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. CAO Morris, you have questions?
Yeah, so the winter parking restrictions, correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, are December 1st to March 31st?
Currently, as they stand, yes.
Right. So if we want to align it with winter parking restrictions, it would be December 1st to March 31st, as opposed to what I heard is extend existing restrictions till the end of December. That leaves you as an organization somewhat vulnerable for the month of December. Specifically as it relates to the curb stops.
Councillor McGuire, do you have a follow-up?
I guess if we don't, we have winter parking restrictions for the time of the year when we're expecting snow. So if we're not expecting snow until December 1st, then we're, I think that the current provisions have been working really well for the summer months when we've got clean asphalt. So I don't see an issue, but if Director Dunlop has an issue with that, we can.
Sierra Morris?
So if I could offer a solution, what I would suggest you do is leave the, let's call them summer restrictions in place till the end of November. Start the winter provisions from December 1st to the end of March to align with the winter parking restrictions, and then remove them at the end of March.
Thank you for writing that methodology. I think you've got nodding heads from council. And if Director Costello has that accurately captured, then we'll proceed accordingly.
I do.
Okay. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is item 7F, council and committee meeting format. And I will turn this over to Director Costello.
Thank you. So our month timeline is up. Actually, we've exceeded the month. As you'll recall, council decided in August to remain using a virtual format with the COVID pandemic ongoing. The recommendation this evening is that we continue to utilize the virtual meeting format. The reason for that rationale is one, we've got increased cases, as Chief Cheeseborough just alluded to during his director's report. And as well, I feel that we've got good viewership with our live stream format on YouTube and Facebook. So it's staff's recommendation that we maintain the virtual format and again, revisit in a month's time.
Okay, I don't see Councillor Dwyer, so, oh, there she is.
Sorry, very quick.
That's okay.
Councillor McGuire, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Director Costello. I was wondering, do we have any data on how long people are watching the videos for our viewing statistics?
I don't have that data. I can see if we can pull it. I don't know if we have that. I know we just get the viewership, but I will check with our IT.
I personally, I think it'd be great data to have, just because to understand if people are scrolling by it or how long they're pausing for when it comes up on Facebook. I'd like to note that both the MHC and the CIP have passed resolutions at their most recent meetings to request the council consider allowing for in-person meetings to resume. I think that although we've got two options presented here, a hybrid model that would allow some of the committees to meet. I know the arena upstairs meeting room, according to the press release, opens October 5th. Based on past public attendance records for many of these meetings, there's ample space to comply with the regulations. But as it stands right now, I find the policy very restrictive for the situation that's evolving week by week. So right now, when the numbers are going up and based on the current modeling, it looks like October, we're going to see another peak. You know, maybe based on only checking this once a month, it's hard to respond as the situation allows. So I would like to see some kind of option that, not to say that we're going to go back to having in-person council meetings next week, but at least allowing the policy to be flexible. So if in consultation with staff, we wanted to go back to some in-person meetings for committees, we could have that option.
Thank you. Director Costello, that's the second time tonight I've done that. Do you have comments in response?
I've been thinking a lot. Councillor McGuire has asked that question via email, and I was thinking about his question today about a hybrid model. And although, you know, I spoke in coordination with our IT department, and although it's doable, it does have its problems as well. If we had a number of people in the chamber and we had, for example, maybe 4 on the live stream. If by chance we were to lose that live stream, whether it be audio or visual, then there's a potential of losing quorum. So with kind of a hybrid model like that, although doable, it does have, it could create some issues for quorum for meetings. But, and I can't say for certain, it would be more doable if we were able to do a hybrid model in our chambers, not so much the arena is not set up as our council chambers is for these types of meetings. So I just offer that as well for food for thought.
Thank you. Councillor McGuire, you have a follow-up?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you, Director Costello. I was wondering, the Police Services Board meetings are taking place in the arena and they're open to the public, although we rarely get anyone show up. I'm wondering for MHC and CIP meetings, if they're open to the public, there's lots of space in there. Maybe there's, you know, it's decided beforehand how many members of the public could show up for the meeting. If that would still need to be put online or if that could continue as they did pre-COVID.
If you were going to determine how many people could actually attend the meeting, then my recommendation would be that you still live stream it if you're going to be putting a cap on the number of public that can attend.
Okay, so how would that cap be different than the fire code capacity in the town hall for a meeting?
There's the provincial restrictions in place right now put a cap on gatherings.
No, but sorry, my question is how would putting a cap on gatherings based on COVID restrictions be different than the fire rating restriction that would exist for the council chambers?
Well, right now the provincial restrictions are much more stringent and strict than what's allowable upstairs in our council chambers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see a lot of hands up, so I've got the list. And actually, now that I've got a stable internet connection, you can unmute yourself or mute yourself, and I'll tell you to unmute when we're ready. So, Councillor Allen, I believe you had your hand up next.
Yeah, no, I think that I sit on the two organizations, on the not the CIP, but I sit on the MHC and also the Railway Museum. Both of those organizations would very much like to meet in person. We had a meeting, sort of an emergency meeting for an alarm system at the Railway Museum. And we were able to, you know, meet with our masks on and stay 2 meters apart just for that short time. And I think that in a big area like that, when there's just, you know, 7 or 8 people, it just makes more sense. I mean, I'm okay either way if the majority feel otherwise, but I find myself, especially from home, if I get very annoyed at just the connections don't work properly. And I get today at our housing task force, there were 5 or 6 times when people were just garbled. And I don't know if that's because of my internet here or theirs. And you know, like my background in education, you get body language, you get cues from how people sit, how they act, how they, you know, come in a room or leave a room. There's all kinds of communication that I think is really good for us that we miss when we're just sitting in front of a camera. But that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Mayor Pankow, I believe you were next.
Thank you. I mean, I'm fine operating the way we have, and as much as I would like to see us operating in person, and I think we could do it. I can see it being difficult in the council chambers. We can probably squeeze in with proper physical distancing, but doesn't allow proper space for maybe all staff that might need to be there. I think we may have challenges with the one set of stairs. So we can leave the back stairs, but the movement of people, make sure we don't cross on stairs, and the access to the public obviously would be very challenging, if not impossible. So we would have, if we're going to do that, we have to have a hybrid model of some type. So we're still live streaming, and that creates, I guess, further challenges. How do we have a technology in place today to enable us to meet as us in person? And live stream effectively. In other words, effectively meaning individual mics for every speaker, a camera which can swing to the person who is speaking. And I don't believe we have those measures in place today. And so my hope would be, considering the environment we're in right now, considering the rising case numbers, considering that we're able to function well this way, my suggestion, or I would support the status quo for the time being. But as we look towards preparing for next month and beyond there, as an insight into what would be required if we're going to operate in person as a council with the option of a member being in virtually, and make sure we can still continue with effective communication to the public.
Thank you, Mayor Panko. Councillor Alfred, you had comments?
Yeah, no, we probably all prefer to have meetings in public, or in public and in person. Councillor Allen's right. There's a lot of communication lost with being on camera. But Carrie, with regard to our new product that's coming, eScribe, does that afford us any? We won't be on Zoom. We'll be on this eScribe platform. Is that correct?
We'll still be, depending if council's going to just be meeting up in the council chambers, then there's the live stream feature through eScribe. If we're still going to be maintaining this format, then we'd be using the Zoom format, and eScribe would be doing the live stream for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I take what Councillor McGuire says too. Some committees are made up of people who are not necessarily have technology or are comfortable with the technology. Is there a way we could consider? Now at our PAC meetings, we literally could have more than 10 people want to be there, and then that's not going to be allowed. So for it to continue virtually makes more sense. For MHC or CIP, where they have a smaller group, and it's broadcast and the public may be welcomed, it seldom happens. Is that a fair statement?
Mm-hmm.
So is there a way that each committee can decide whether or not this works for them or doesn't work for them? I know with the DBA, the virtual thing works fine. Because can we consider doing what works for that committee?
Director Costello, do you have comments on the flexibility for each individual group to make up their own decision?
There could be offered some flexibility. Each group would have to consider their size of how many people, as well as the size of location they're holding the meeting. They also have to, if they're going to be hosting a meeting virtually, or if they're going to be hosting in person, but there's no room for the public, then there still is that condition that they have to live stream for public engagement. I have to sit with that one for a sec.
Okay, thank you. While you ruminate on that one, I believe Councillor McGuire has perhaps a related question, and I believe Sierra Morris has a point that he wants to clarify. Sierra Morris, is your point directly related to what Carrie just said?
Well, somewhat directly. I just offer that we would have to be prepared to turn people away. Because the meetings are open to the public means, of course, that anybody could show up if it was a contentious issue. More than 10 could show up, and we'd have to be prepared to turn them away. So that's a consideration. The other one I would offer is that some people, I get the point about visual cues and being there in person. We mustn't forget some people rely on lip reading to understand communications. And with a mask, that's very, very difficult. So I would offer that as well. And finally, I would just say that this is about risk management. And what's being proposed exposes people to others outside of their bubble. And we have to bear in mind that the province is telling us to stay within our bubbles. And with the case count rising, I think we ought to heed that advice. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra Morris. Councillor McGuire, you've got a follow-up point, after which I'll move on to Councillor Brennan, who hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Manhire, if you're here, what's the capacity of the upstairs meeting room at the rank? I don't understand some of the arguments against having the meetings in person if we're opening that up for rental on October 5th.
Through the chair, the capacity for the room is 50 with the square footage and the spacing.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan and then Councillor McKenna.
Thanks very much. I watched the press conference today with Premier Ford. 700 cases today. We are in a second wave. The case count today is worse than it has been since this started. I think it's behooving on us to ensure that we stay safe, staff stay safe, the public stay safe. The committees, I watched the Housing Committee today online while I had my breakfast. I watched the Heritage Committee online. The transparency is fantastic. I mean, 2,700 people on September 14th checked in. I don't know how long they watched it, but 2,700 people watched it. You know, I think that this works well. You see my face, I see your face, so the visuals are there. I don't know what else I'm doing that you're missing. So the other point is too, if we're going to go down that road, there's going to be a cost, okay? Because as I read with County Council a week or two ago, they had an in-face meeting. They had barriers between the councillors, and at the end of the meeting, there was a concern brought up, I think, by the mayor of Mississippi Mills about, you know, uncomfortable about, you know, being that close together. The mayor of Perth the next day said he won't be going back. He took the self-assessment tool online, and he's at risk. I've taken that self-assessment tool. I'm at risk. So that means my wife's at risk, my son's at risk. This is not going away. I think that we're functioning quite well. The business of the town goes on, and I support staff's recommendation for let's look at this in a month, and we can look at it on a monthly basis. But right now, we got to keep our pedal to the metal here, and you know, it's not getting any better. And I think that we're functioning quite well as we are. So.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor McKenna, you.
Yeah, I'd support staff recommendation as well at this time. I think the chair pointed out earlier tonight, COVID is presenting us new opportunities that we hadn't anticipated before. And I think a much deeper and more robust method of virtual meeting is in order. Not right now, but if this is going to be with us, and I think even beyond the COVID crisis, we have people engaged and involved that have not been in the past, people with physical disabilities that can't climb our stairs or just can't get out. And so I would like to think that there's opportunities for our town and us to look at next year's budget and invest in, if we haven't, you know, in the longer term, really cutting edge virtual meeting format that will, we're a small town. It's hard for us to do it with the budget we've got, but I think we could do better and we could make it easier for people to participate virtually, maybe not right away, but I like the recommendation for now. I think we should stay on top of it. And we all welcome the opportunity to get back face to face, but it's not right now. But so if we could make sure that we don't have the gaps that we see and that people participate as seamlessly as possible within the means and the budgets we have, that's what I would like to see. And I'm not a technical person, But I know that others have figured this out, and we could probably learn from them.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. So based on the discussion so far, I have 3 recorded names in favor of a hybrid model and 3 recorded names in favor of status quo. McGuire, Allen, and Alfred are looking for the flexibility through the hybrid model that had been proposed. Oh, Councillor Alfred wants to clarify.
Yeah, I had some questions and posed some scenarios that we could consider, but as for tonight, I would probably go ahead and go with status quo with the
Okay.
recommendations by staff.
Thank you for clarifying. So just before I get to Councillor McGuire again, I'm going to provide my own commentary on this. I think one of the things that resonates the most with me in discussing opening up the council chambers in particular, but the town hall in general, to allow council and community members to meet there, is the fact that this is a place of business for the bubble that is the staff that work there. And I can share my experiences as a coworker in a municipal setting. I mean, the longer we keep council and committees away from the staff, the safer that they will be and the safer we will be. I look at the rising number of COVID cases. I look at the risk of exposure that we're seeing within our community. My child was a class member in the COVID scare from last week. I think there's a very real potential that we are going to quickly see ourselves in a position where we need to start protecting ourselves to an even greater degree than we are seeing today. So I am not in favor of moving away from the status quo right now. I can appreciate that the committees have struggles with the electronic meeting format. I see that. I can see even tonight, my own internet connection was unstable. But that said, I don't think that's a reason to put a greater number of people at risk for what is, in essence, non-essential business. So I'm in favor of remaining with the status quo. I can appreciate the comments to move towards a hybrid model, but I'm not prepared to make that decision. Okay, Councillor McGuire, you had a follow-up?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'd just like to make one last comment on the safety of the arena protocols, because we looked at these protocols a few weeks ago in preparation for reopening the facility, and I didn't hear any of these concerns then, and I'm really concerned people are worried about the safety of people that may rent that room upstairs, that it hasn't been addressed. So I think the other thing that needs to be acknowledged is that although we're functioning well, certain committees are functioning well, the reason why the MHC and the CIP passed these resolutions, the MHC, it's the first recorded vote since I've joined in 2015 or 2016 because it's not functioning well. The Police Services Board is meeting upstairs in the arena, open to the public. Provisions in place. Director Manhire's team's done an excellent job of keeping everybody safe. The recommendations from the health authorities are clear about social distancing, mask wearing, disinfecting, spacing people out. So I just, this black and white approach to it, I think is very restrictive, and it's taking a toll on our volunteers that although it's not essential business, I'd argue too that dining at a restaurant isn't essential business right now. Supporting our small businesses are not necessarily essential right now, but we're doing that because that's what the health authorities have given us permission to do. And it's important that these things keep moving forward for the vibrancy of our community. So I look forward to the next discussion in October, and I hope that I really encourage council to reach out to members of these committees so that they can hear about the issues they're facing. It's well beyond connectivity issues going forward.
Thank you, Councillor McGuire. Unless that dramatically changes the way that council is voting, your comments are appreciated, but I think that the direction coming out of this meeting is to move forward with an amendment or rather, no amendment. Director Costello, perhaps you can clarify. We're just staying status quo.
I'm hearing status quo revisit in a month's time.
Thank you. So we'll look forward to a follow-up report in the month, and there are no action items coming out of the discussion tonight. Moving on, item 7F. This item is with Director Dunlop, respecting an extension of a funding agreement with the Ontario Commuter Cycling Group. So Troy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of the report before Council this evening is just to seek approval for execution of an extension to a funding agreement we currently have under the Ontario Municipal Commuter Cycling Program. You'll see background in the report that provides an outline on the origins of the project back in 2017 when the program was rolled out by the prior provincial government. The grant program of the day was premised on promoting commuter cycling, essentially getting cyclists or getting more people out of their cars and providing more viable options for people to cycle to work. This year, on July 30th, the town received correspondence from the Ministry of Transportation advising that our current agreement, which expires December 31st of this year, could be extended along with other municipalities to the end of December of 2021. That extension is very much premised as a result of the impacts that COVID-19 has had on the construction industry this calendar year. Going back, just for more background on the grant itself, back in December 4th of 2017, the program was announced, and we received funding for $25,000 towards a project that would see the creation of a multi-use cycling path along the waterfront from Beckwith Street. So essentially where the pedestrian underpass is, beside the locks, down through along the water shore to Lower Reach Park. So the length of that multi-use track was 375 meters long. That concept and that initial application that was rolled out back in 2017 was founded from the 2012 pedestrian linkages plan, and also the vision that was contained in the 2013 downtown revitalization and waterfront integration master plan. The second phase of that project, I should identify, did not get approved. The program, which was originally intended to be a multi-phase cycling initiative by the former provincial government, was canceled after the last elections and removal of the provincial carbon tax. Just to give you some background on this project in particular, we did advance with environmental reviews on the corridor in the summer of 2018. We engaged stakeholders. You'll see the long list of stakeholders that were consulted, including Parks Canada at that time. We were advised in 2018 that a archaeological assessment would be required to essentially widen and dig out the existing gravel trail and essentially get it prepared for an asphalt resurface. Back in 2018, Parks Canada advised that they possibly might be able to assist in that effort with a desktop archaeological review by their staff. Unfortunately, as we rolled the project into early 2019, we found out that they in fact did not have resources available for that. So much of the project planning that went ahead in 2019 involved an archaeological assessment. Essentially, we hired Golder and Associates. They dug test pits at regular intervals along the path, and there were no archaeological finds of interest. That report was finalized and forwarded to the Ministry of Tourism and Culture for review. In December 2019, we did receive notification from Parks Canada that they, at that time, could no longer support paving and widening that asphalt path through that corridor. The information we received at that time was it was no longer fitting with the vision of the UNESCO site. We had a follow-up meeting with senior officials at Parks Canada to further explore those discussions in January in 2020, and that position was reiterated to be very firm. So the purpose of the report before council tonight is we are looking to take advantage of the grant extension offered by the province. The town, and in particular the Public Works Department, has been in regular communications with the Ministry of Transportation, and they are aware of some of our challenges around permitting right now through Parks Canada. If we do obtain an extension of the agreement, it will allow opportunity to further those discussions with MTO on perhaps substituting this project with another. Just from the financial end on the project, the expenditures to date have been $9,985. However, only $58 of the actual grant portion has been spent to date. Overall, this initiative, and in particular, the development of cycling facilities along on the river, did follow the strategic priorities around our transportation network, specifically strategic priority number 3. And also it followed strategic priority number 4, waterfront development and placemaking. So our recommendation to council right now, this evening's part of the report, is that we do get authorization to extend that funding agreement. Thank you. Excuse me.
Thank you, Director Dunlop. I see a lot of hands. So I'll start with Mayor Pankow.
Thanks, Troy. Can you provide a little bit more insight into the 9985? Is that primarily the cost of the archaeological assessment?
Through the chair, that is almost the full cost of the archaeological assessment with Golder. Now, I should add that, and it is mentioned within the council report, those investments do continue to have value should the town continue to develop that trail along the river past the Longshed through to Lower Reach Park. It could be upgraded. The surface is poor in many locations. There would have to be some amount of excavation and placement of stone dust as an example to further develop that trail in the future. So those investments still hold value, even though it looks like the paving is not going to advance.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's frustrating when Parks Canada indicates a requirement for an archaeological assessment. We spend the money to get one, and they tell us, oh, it doesn't matter whether you have one or not, we're not going to allow you to follow through and do this. I think we should be sending them the invoice for the $99.85, whatever the amount is. But I do support the staff recommendation. I mean, this money is available. Some left of the money be budgeted as well. And I think if we can come up with another route in town that certainly could benefit from this and create a safer cycling environment for our citizens, and certainly, obviously, I think of the Canopy campus, where we've got a lot of people who could be cycling downtown for pick up lunch or whatever. That's so from a commuter standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. So I'll support the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I think the mayor took the words out of my mouth. I mean, we had a plan. We took it to Parks Canada. Correct me if I'm wrong here. They said, well, you need some archaeological work done. We may be able to help you with that. Then it was like, well, we can't. So we did it on our own. They knew the plan was paving at the time, as far as I know. And so we did the work, and now the paving's not okay. There is pavement along the Rideau Canal on bike lanes in Ottawa. So is there a surface that would be acceptable to the good people at Parks Canada so we could move forward with this project? Because I'd like to see that project go from not only to Broadview, but all the way over the Old Slies. And then when we do the nice connection from Old Slies to Queen Street, then we're in business. But is there a surface that would be amenable to them? Do we know?
Through the chair, Through the chair, we had very extensive discussions with Parks Canada early in terms and perhaps more so with Rideau Valley Conservation Authority on types of hard surface for the pathway. In order to meet the commuter objective for a multi-use pathway, we would have to design according to the Ontario Traffic Manual Book 18. That means that we would have to stripe it. There would have to be directional information there for pedestrians and cyclists. The conclusion through our discussions early on in the project where asphalt was the only reasonable solution to achieve that. Parks Canada was engaged in, again, the design of the pathway early on. Our staff walked the corridor with them. And of course, it was all clearly understood to be the driver for the archaeological study work. So I do not see discussions on changing the surfaces being anything that would be expedited quickly.
Okay, thanks for that. I support your recommendation. We got to take the money and use it. That would be the best place to use it in my view, though.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director Dunlop, for your report. I know this, back when it passed in 2017, I was really excited to see the previous council move forward with it, and I was even happier to hear that Premier Ford kept the funding in place. But I'm really getting frustrated with Parks Canada. I think for having the headquarters for the UNESCO World Heritage Site in our town, they've got vacant buildings with boarded up windows. They've evicted the campground before completing consultation, let alone the visioning exercise that somehow also applies to this project. First, they backtracked on the archaeological assessment, and now they've left us with this $10,000 bill that I fully support Mayor Penko's suggestion that we send them the invoice for it. And now it's the hypocrisy of having their own paved trails that are being maintained adjacent to something that they're not going to allow us to do. I think as a stakeholder, they're not coming to the table. I'd like to see our council apply more pressure to them, get a more direct line of communication. And I would like to see a representative from Parks Canada come to council so they're accountable to these decisions and they start engaging with the residents of Smith Falls. So I support the recommendation, but I'm not happy about the way Parks is working with us.
Duly noted, Councillor McGuire. I'll circle back to the bulk of your considerations, but I'll ask for comments from the rest of council first. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a tough act to follow. So thanks, Councillor McGuire, for your passion. And I agree. I support staff recommendation. I encourage us to keep our eye on the prize, which is expanding more accessible non-car access throughout our community. So this is a setback. It's not going to stop us from keep going towards completing many more kilometers, I hope, of bike and pedestrian traffic. My question, even though I support it, how far away from the water, if we were to add a bike lane to the street, would they have any say over that, Director Dunlop? I'm not saying we have the money to do that, but if I understand it, there's no sidewalk along Riverdale that I'm aware of. If we were to add a cycle lane to the edge of that and pave that, I know it costly, I'm not suggesting we do it, but would they have any say over an additional 5 or 6 feet off of our roadway?
Councillor McKenna, to clarify, you are speaking of the Riverdale road allowance that you're looking for improvements on?
Well, the trail runs beside that. And I'm just saying, and if we just widen our road a little bit, could we add a bike lane there and pave it and tell Parks Canada that
something not so nice?
No, anyways, and I'm not suggesting we have the money or the time, but keep our eye on the long game. It's to improve the active transportation in our community. This is a minor setback. We're going to keep going. Let's be creative. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Mr. Dunlop?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to reiterate that it's very important for the current council to develop plans around active transportation, because ultimately when staff do file applications with the province, they do look to the plans that you have in place. Clearly, the 2012 plan and the 2013 plan are getting dated, at least when it comes to active transportation. So advancing that strategic initiative next year is going to be very important to setting priorities for investment going into the future and assisting staff in application efforts and with council endorsed plans.
Thank you.
And do we have any, sorry, Madam Chair, does Parks Canada have any say on the development of our street there?
Mr. Dunlop?
Through the chair, my understanding is their authorities extend 30 meters within the waterway, but in general on the street there, I think we would be very much in our realm in terms of planning that type of infrastructure. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Alfred.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support staff's recommendation, but I echo what all the rest have said. We started down this path and spent $10,000, and I understand what Troy says. He's in those meetings with them. He hears how their strident refusal to allow asphalt. But I don't think a little pushback on some of this would hurt. And I'm sure Troy has gone in there and said, hey, we already spent $10,000. You need to let us finish this path. It was asphalt. But I agree with, to some degree, with Councillor McGuire on pushing back on some of this stuff. And I also agree with Councillor McKenna. There's more than one way. If it's not that way, then it'll be another way. So I support staff's recommendation, but I don't think this subject is over yet.
Thank you, Councillor Alfred. Councillor Allen, you have not spoken yet. Do you have comments or questions that you would like to provide? We can still hear you, Lorraine.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, this is frustrating. I've been sitting on the Active Transportation Committee for the last 7 years or so, and we've had some really wonderful workshops. Experts come and tell us that this is so critical to our children growing up and being healthy. And yet, you know, we get this kind of thing. It's frustrating because then I share Councillor McGuire's upset at all of this, because it should be an easy thing. You know, we should be able to say, let's get this done and let's have our children on that path. But it's just frustrating. So I agree with, I will support the recommendation, but I just find, like my colleagues, it's frustrating.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Sierra Morris, if you don't mind holding off, I'm going to provide my own comments and then I'll go to you. Troy, I think you have clear direction and consensus from council to move forward with the extension to the funding agreement. So that'll come forward at the next meeting of council. And best of luck to you on that project. I think, like my colleagues, and I have said this before and I will say it again, I am routinely disappointed in Parks Canada's lack of willingness to participate with the local municipality. I think it's utterly ironic that the stretch of path that runs right through the lock station that this path would connect to is fully paved, that all of the paths around the main central lock station in town are fully paved and hard surfaced. And while they may try and make an argument that the canal way there is also a hard surface and man-made structure, I think we could counter that the entire canal is a man-made structure. So a stretch along River and Riverdale to create not only a pathway that is transversable, that meets the criteria of active cycling, but also one that is accessible in accordance with the AODA, is a basic principle that I cannot believe that the federal government thinks they are exempt from. So I would actually move that in addition to the direction that we give to Troy tonight, that we have a more fulsome conversation as council about how we would like to further negotiations with Parks Canada on this and the myriad of other projects that we have ongoing along the canal. And perhaps when time allows on an agenda that is not so full, staff would be kind enough to put this on for general discussion by council so that we may give staff some direction on how to proceed. CAO Morris, you had additional comments that you wanted to provide.
Yes, thank you. So I think we have reasonably clear understanding of council's intention on this matter. So I was going to suggest that staff could circle back with Parks Canada and re-engage in this discussion if council felt that you were comfortable leaving it at the administrative level for a potential resolution.
I think that is fair, and you do have consensus of the group to do so. But I think Councillor Maguire has made a good point that we would like to see a representative from Parks Canada attend a meeting to perhaps talk about their relationship with the town. And then I would reiterate that I think that there's merit in council having an open and frank conversation about the relationship with Parks Canada. I don't see any nodding heads from council. Is anyone opposed to that proposal? Councillor Alfred?
I'm not sure whether I'm for or opposed. What I would endorse is CAO Morris re-engaging and Director Dunlop re-engaging at the administrative level, and then bring back something to us. Take their temperature or once they've been told what the temperature of council is.
Thank you. Councillor Maguire?
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I definitely support inviting Parks Canada to come and participate in a meeting. I think we get reports from all kinds of stakeholders, all kinds of agencies and groups in the community, and that's the one that's notably absent. So I don't know if I'd have anything else to add to a council discussion, but would definitely like to have a presentation and a question and answer session in council with a representative from Parks Canada.
So noted. Thank you. Anyone else have any additional comments that they want to weigh in with? Seeing none, I see Lorraine flashing, but I think it's because Larry's sneezing in the background. With that, I think that concludes our discussion on this topic. Troy has direction to proceed to the next meeting of council, and CAO Morris will cycle back once administratively this is discussed with Parks Canada. So thank you, Director Dunlop. The final item on tonight's agenda is everyone's favorite topic, budget monitoring. Thank you, Janet, for holding in there through a very late night. You're presenting the August rendition of budget monitoring, and I'll leave it to you to discuss.
Yes, so as I indicated in my report, I'm currently projecting an overall deficit of $326,000. The majority of the decrease to the projected deficit stems from payroll-related surpluses as well as utilities such as Hydro and Enbridge, and also some slight increases in water revenues. As also noted in my report, I have yet to allocate the Safe Restart funding, which came in at around $531,000. I had been reaching out since my last report to try to get some clarification on the eligibility criteria. As of this morning, I heard back from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and their response was, again, very generic, but it stipulates municipalities have the flexibility to use phase 1 funding to address the specific priorities of their communities based on their unique COVID-related operating pressures. So with that, certainly that will go a long way to our shortfall, but it's still at a shortfall of about $127,000 of what I consider to be COVID-related expenditures. Further to this, I did ask about any further information on phase 2. And they did say that the details for reporting will be provided shortly. So still don't have that. The deadline for that is October 31st. So whether they extend that, given we're now coming up into October, I've yet to know, but I certainly will share that with council once that's been we've received notice on that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Janet. I also note that this is the first time that we are seeing you reporting live from your brand new office in the renovated town hall. It looks gorgeous. The lighting is spot on, and I'm sure it smells as good in there as your office normally does.
Yes, it's lovely.
Yes. So with that, Councillor McKenna, we'll start with you.
Thanks very much, Janet, for your monthly updates. I do very much appreciate it. And I know all the council, we have to stay on top of this. I think there's nothing more we can do this month without that other information. I know we're trying to get it. So that really is will tell us quite a bit once the ministry lets us know what the restrictions are in the next, just how much difficulty or not we're going to be in. So unfortunately, I believe we're going to have to wait another while yet. And I know you're keeping close eye on everything, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKenna. Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, just thumbs up. Thanks, Janet. Sorry, that's anticlimactic too. We're glad that you were able to bring us an update, and we look forward to receiving more information as it becomes available. Thank you, Janet. So with that, council, thank you for your patience. It has been a very long evening. We have come to item 8 on our agenda, which is in-camera items, of which we have none. So with that, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor McGuire. All those in favor? Delightful. Have a good evening, everybody.